CBSE Board, Class 9, History, Chapter 2, Part 2, Audio by Renee Matthew. We can see two different points on the liberals here. So the term is liberals, but they were not so flexible. That also we saw earlier. They felt men of property mainly should have the right to vote. So only people who had the right to property should have the right to vote. And they also did not encourage women to vote. Now let's take a look at the radicals. In contrast, radicals wanted a nation which was represented by the majority of the population. They did not want power to be vested in only a very few part of the population. And unlike the liberals, they supported women's suffragette movements. That is, women also were allowed to cast their vote. Unlike liberals, they opposed the privileges of great landowners. Like, they did not want people to have access to property, because what will happen then is poor people will remain poor and wealthy people will start getting richer. So they were against the accumulation of property, especially by the rich. Then you may think that they were totally against having private property. It is not like that. When you write your answers, you shouldn't write that they were against the existence of private property. Of course, you can have that. But there shouldn't be focus on property by the wealthy people, because that will lead to unequal distribution of the property, which was not a right standard, especially towards a nation which was coming up. Conservatives were opposed to radicals and liberals. So conservatives were totally different from the radicals and the liberals. Now, after the French Revolution, you can see that the conservatives opened their mind and they were ready for a change. It's not that they were against the change or they were completely against changes. It is not like that. But it will take time to actually convince the conservatives. They were not ready for change, or they were not flexible for change, just like the other groups. So, by the 19th century, they accepted that some change was inevitable, but believed that the past had to be respected and change had to be brought about through a slow process. So they always wanted change to take place as a slow process. Such differing ideas about societal change. So these kind of things can be seen in both the political and social spheres of the nation, where you can see that there was a lot of crust and trough. Ups and downs were there, which followed the French Revolution. And what happened? The various attempts at revolution and national transformation in the 19th century helped define. So in spite of all these changes, it actually helped to define the change towards political transformation and the political tendencies. So you can see that these ups and downs only led to the proper political formation of a nation which was really revolting and which really wanted a lot of changes to take place. Without the crests and troughs, nothing will happen. So you can imagine what will happen to the industries and how the industries grew up. These political trend, because the trend was changing, just like how fashion changes now, the trend was also changing politically, and it were signs of a new time. So you can imagine what will happen, where it was a time of profound social and economic change. So when there's a change in politics, there will always be a change in the society and the economic condition and status of a nation. So people started shifting from the countryside to the urban places or the towns and cities. Why? Because the growing demand to live, everything was rising up. The growing demand to live was not proportional to the money that they got. The wages were poor, so they started looking for jobs in cities and towns. Did you understand? So that's how the cities expanded. Industrial regions developed. Railways expanded because people were given jobs, and also industrial revolution occurred. Machines were invented. So industrialization brought men, women and children to factories where they started working. Child labor was there, and meeting the daily expenses, meeting the daily needs was really a tough task for all the people who belonged to the lower strata of the society. But what happened as a result of that? You can imagine that so many people were working in different industries and factories, and work hours were often long and wages were poor. So that was something which actually agitated. So what will happen? They were not paid properly. The hours were also long. So because of that, unemployment was common, particularly during times of low demand for industrial goods. So people did not believe, or they did not start believing in industrial goods. So unemployment was common. They used to send away, or they used to ask the laborers to just leave. So what will happen as a result of that? Housing problems came up. Sanitation also came up. Even now you can see that in thickly populated places, housing and sanitation is a great problem, and the government doesn't take much steps in some of the places to actually solve it. So there is a big line which is given, or which is highlighted in red. Liberals and radicals searched for solution to these issues. So nothing is talked about the conservatives. Almost all industries were the property of individuals. So most of the industries belonged, or it was concentrated in the hands of the individuals. So were the radicals for it? No. Liberals and radicals themselves were often property owners and employers. So they will say something, they will preach something, but the practice was totally different. So they themselves said that you shouldn't have people having more property, but they themselves were property owners and employers. Having made their wealth through trade or industrial ventures, they felt that such effort should be encouraged. So because they had wealth by accumulating property, they felt that this effort should be encouraged, that its benefit would be achieved if the workforce in the economy was healthy and citizens were educated. So they felt that this is the way that you can bring about changes in the workforce. This is the way that you can rise the economy, because they themselves accumulated the wealth through that. So the benefit would be achieved if the workforce in the economy was healthy. Opposed to the privileges the old aristocracy had by birth, they firmly believed in the value of individual effort, labor and enterprise. So many of the people, they just wanted independent hold over the property, over industries, and individual effort, labor and such kind of things. So they also felt that there will be a proper change in the economy. It will become healthy only if the citizens were educated. If freedom of individuals was ensured, if the poor could labor and those with capital could operate without restraint, they believed that societies would develop. So only if the individuals had some freedom, if there was some labor for these people, if the capital could operate without much limitations and without much strictness, then they believed that societies would develop. But was that really possible? We also know that this is how everything will work. The freedom of individuals should be there. Labor should be given more flexibility. But will it really work? Then only societies will really develop. Many working men and women who wanted changes in the world rallied around liberal and radical groups and not the conservatives and parties in the early 19th century. So liberals and radicals were open to such kind of things, but we don't know if it will really work. So some nationalists, liberals and radicals wanted revolutions to put an end to the governments established in Europe in 1815. So that was their next target, to put an end to the government which was really encouraging all these kind of destiny through birth. In France, Italy, Germany and Russia, they became revolutionaries. So these places had lot of revolutionaries to overthrow the existing monarchs. They did not want the existing rulers to rule their countries. Nationalists talked of revolutions that would create nations where all citizens would have equal rights. So same thing as the French Revolution. Look at this personality, Giuseppe Mazzini, an Italian nationalist, conspired with others. He had meetings, or he had secret meetings with others to achieve this in Italy, because he wanted to create nation that was free of rule, which was vested in one person, that is monarchy, where all citizens would have equal rights. It was not very easy to achieve that. Even now it is difficult. So nationalists elsewhere, including India, read his writings. So that's a very important point. An Italian nationalist who really inspired the Indians, that is Giuseppe Mazzini.